All right. Welcome, everyone. I hope you're all enjoying the BBW days. My name is Tad Thompson. I'm from Microsoft. I've been working with what we call Power Platform and all the previous names for about 22 years or so. And I've also had the privilege of working with Blackbaud for the last 3 or so years as well, and doing various workshops as well as events such as this, and then the big conference such as the one in Denver last year and Seattle this coming year or this coming fall. So today I'm going to go over an example of building a Copilot studio, a Copilot using Copilot Studio. It's essentially a new naming or branding of what we used to call Power Virtual Agent, plus a lot of additional features that come along with it. I've got just a few slides to go through first, and then I'll get into a pretty primarily demo. So I just want to go through quick on the slides. I will share these as well, so they will go into the location where they've been being stored. Let's see, why am I not clicking? There we go. Okay. All right. So introduction done. Copilot overview. I'm just going to do a little bit of that. I'm going to talk about the components that you use to build Copilot. And then I'll get into demo, and then I'll pop back for one or two more slides of a bunch of resources that I have. And again, you'll get this slide deck. So first, an overview of what it is. Now, you've probably heard the term Copilot. It's essentially Microsoft's naming of ChatGPT. First there was 3, then there was 4, now there's 4.0, and we're leveraging that. However, you can also build your own Copilot for use throughout your organization or for your customers, vendors. However, some people use it for B2B, B2C, and B2E to their employees. So like if you were doing like onboarding or trying to ask IT questions or help and that sort of thing, it can be really quite useful there. And then I'm going to go through the workspace. Those screenshots are really small. I'm going to go through the workspaces where we build this. And then there's also an admin studio. So if you're an administrator or if you want to monitor how your Copilot is behaving, there is some good data and statistics and logging that happens there. So you've probably heard some of these terms quite a bit. A lot of what you're seeing here this week might be low code, also some pro code, but also some no code. So really what I'm going to show is you're not going to be writing any code. Now, you, of course, can fairly quickly graduate to at least low code. And low code is usually, we use that term mostly for things like functions. It's like if you work in Excel, I'm sure many of you do, you may have written functions or kind of built them within the tool. And the low code that we use throughout Power Platform is very similar to that. Now, is it exactly the same from application to application? No, but it's like Power BI, we use DAX. Power Apps, we use the functions there. Power Automate, similar, but there's also some of its own functions too. So speaking of Power Automate, I will kind of touch on that slightly, mostly in the context of what we call actions. But Power Automate, I'm sure some of you have been in other sessions here this week that have leveraged that or similar automation tools. This just happens to be ours. Blackbaud has connectors that can connect to all of their applications, plus Power Automate. If you're not a Microsoft shop, there's lots of connectors for, say, Google, for Salesforce, for as you can see, there are more than 1,200. And then that can be used by Copilot to connect to other data and pull it in or look at it or look up data or do some calculation. It's just lots and lots of things that we might do. And then you can also then modify, if you're using Microsoft 365, meaning like Teams and Outlook and PowerPoint, you can actually modify the Copilot that is used natively there. So with Copilot Studio, it's not an app that you download, and it's really just a portal, similar to what we call the Maker portal for Power Apps or for Power Automate. It has its own. You can navigate easily from one of the others if you were building an app or some flow. And then it's an online service. So it does require internet access while you're working on it. Unlike, say, Power BI, you might actually be building some reports offline. And then you're going to build out that conversation. You're going to orchestrate the conversation that you might have. And there's lots of kind of auto magic that happens. Earlier versions, most everything we had to kind of build manually, but now we can do so much of it simply by telling Copilot what we want it to do. And then building your own, they call it standalone. It's kind of funny. They say build your own with Copilot Studio standalone, or build a plugin if you have Microsoft 365, or excuse me, work with the Microsoft 365 Copilot over here. It's really the exact same place. Even though they say standalone, it's all the same thing. All right, so let's jump into the components that make up building your own. So we have first, I'm starting kind of the upper right. There's little boxes that will appear. So a lot of times what you're going to do is chat about knowledge. So that might be simply pointing to a website, and I'm going to do that in my example. You might load documents. You might point at SharePoint. You might have some sort of knowledge-based database. You might have files, internal files that you're going to use. And it's also really, really, really important is that your data, all those files that you're working with, the exception of public websites that you might interact with, but all of that internal stays internal. That never goes outside of the guardrails of your organization. We do not use our Copilot AI generation on your data, not at all. And so that's a really important, I was really trying to stress that. And then we can create our own specific topics too. And I'll do that a little bit as well. I'm going to do kind of the auto magic, ask Copilot to build the topics for me. I'll also build a couple. And then we're also going to look at actions and plugins. And these we use kind of the way they sound. They're actions to do something. But if they're a little more sophisticated, we might use a plugin. And I'm going to show an example of taking one of the out-of-the-box plugins so you don't have to code it. Oftentimes, plugins you would be coding. And then we can publish these to quite a few different channels, teams, a website that you might have, maybe internal intranet, publish it to SharePoint. There's lots of places that you can publish this. And even to a website, it's really just a snippet of code that you would need in the HTML of whatever page you want to show it on. If you happen to use Microsoft Power Pages as your external facing portal, it's actually pretty simple in a few clicks. And then once you started using it, you begin to do some monitoring. You might need to make improvements. It's not going to be perfect out of the box, but by monitoring it and seeing how successful is it being, that you'll begin to be able to make some modifications to it to ensure that it's working. And then lastly on this slide, there's other conversational services if you wanted to get into it. I'm not going to today. It would require maybe an Azure subscription, and whereas you can get into Azure AI Studio, which would be a kind of you might call it a pro code version of the Copilot Studio that I'm going to show you. So if you really needed to do more sophisticated, more complex, more dev forward type work there. So some of the key components, I touched on some of these already. Topics. So we've always had this in our Power Virtual Agent, now Copilot. It's the concept of a topic of conversation. And it could be about, how do I do something? Where is this? I want to do this, or something isn't working. I'm getting an error message. What can I do about it? And these can be auto-generated by telling Copilot that you want to build a topic such as this, or you might build them yourself, especially if they're more specific to your organization. So once we start building those, they'll have things like a trigger. So you're going to give it various phrases that will help identify which topic you're going to use, this topic that you're building. And there's a little bit of an art and a learning to how to build those trigger phrases. I could talk quite a bit about it, but just think of it as using keywords in a short phrase, not too short, not too long, and also using keywords in different ways. So you might use, how do I return a product, or how do I process a return? So it's kind of, you might be using them as both an action and a noun, and that can be very helpful because your customers, your constituents are not always going to ask things the way you think they should be asking them. And then once you are working in that topic, it's kind of a vertical flow, which makes complete sense because that's what's happening in the interactive bot pane, is that you're kind of working your way down, and you'll very likely have kind of a back and forth. You'll have branches. So like if you ask something and the customer says this, do this. If they say this, do this. And so it can kind of keep working your way down and branching and so forth. And then there's all sorts of things we can do. We can simply say a message back to the customer. We can ask a question. That question might be multiple choice. It might be, give me specific kind of data, such as email or phone number, or you might have several options, or you might build what we call an entity. I'll talk about that in a minute, where it's a list of records that are specific. There are some out of the box. There's like state, country, that date information that everybody uses, and so we've pre-built some of those for you. Adaptive cards, you've perhaps heard some about adaptive cards in some of these sessions, and think of that as like a small form that looks nice and presents data well. Maybe it asks for more information, and behind it is some JSON that is code that gets auto generated for you. But then, depending upon your development skills, you might modify it further yourself. And then actions, and I'm going to show an example of this today. They're a way of you're going to build them out using this step-by-step wizard. It's about 3 steps. You'll likely connect to something. There's a whole bunch of actions out of the box. You can think of actions as dovetailing really nicely with connectors. So you want to look up data in some other database. You want to look in some cloud service. The example I'm going to do is get the weather. And so, or maybe you want to get data out of an Excel spreadsheet, or write data into an Excel spreadsheet. And then we build that action, and then we can use that action throughout all of our copilots within our tenant. And then we might also build them a little more custom, a little more complex, to create new functionality that Copilot doesn't have, or accessing stuff, data that Copilot can't access out of the box. So you're creating that custom connector. Entities, think of them as kind of like this mini little table, maybe. You might think of it as like an option set or master data. You think about within your environment, you've got lots of master data. It could be a list of services that you provide, or maybe a list of events that you're offering, or maybe if you're getting donations, it could be things like the the frequency. Is it monthly, bi-monthly, annually, one time, all those kind of things. So it'd be a set list of data that you could use throughout all of your copilots. And we have a bunch out of the box. And I moved ahead a little quick there. That box on the right there, it says we have a bunch of pre-built ones like age, colors, numbers, names. I mentioned states, months of the year, countries are all ones that are available, so you don't have to build those. And then we have a concept of custom entities. So this is where you're building your own, which is, I guess I was talking ahead on that already. And you might have a closed list, meaning that it's typically not a real big list, and it's just pretty much set. And this is an example of like shirt size, extra small, small, medium, large, maybe you have XL, XXL, that sort of thing. And then it's a not formidable list that you're going to set it up, and you're not going to be making changes to it. But then other lists, you might make changes to it kind of frequently or even dynamically. You might actually allow Copilot to add more values. And then here's an example here too, where you might have within your list synonyms. So for instance, here's a list of sports, and you might add in other words that are not the one you ultimately want them to land on, such as baseball, but you might add in other things like, baseball bat or diamond, or, just various words that if somebody is trying to describe, in this case, a sport, you'll get them to the correct item. It's not a super great example, but it's okay. And then you can also work with alternative text that can represent maybe that same thing. So maybe instead of skiing, we said winter sports there, and then we have snowshoeing, snowboarding, alpine, Nordic, and so forth. And that can all get you to winter sports, maybe. And then with the generative AI, so this is kind of that next step. I'm not going to get into that today, but this is where you might start building out, allowing Copilot to learn from the work it's doing and to begin to generate more multi-turn answers based on what's been going on within the organization and how successful. Because you might be using Copilot throughout the organization, and maybe you are in a call center and you're supporting your constituents, and you get answers from internal knowledge, and maybe it's not exactly right, and you could give it a thumbs down, or yes, it did, that was correct, you give it a thumbs up. Copilot will continue to learn from that, and be better in the future. Lastly, here before I get into demo is just one example, a screenshot here of the analytics of your bot. So how well is it performing? Are you providing like a customer satisfaction? That's a little thing that it's a little pre-built topic that you can add in to any one of your copilots that will, give like a 5-star, 1 to 5-star rating, like you do with Uber or something. And that can be a good metric that over time you can learn how well your copilots are doing. All right. So I'll just give you just a quick tour of Copilot Studio, and then I'll start building one. I've got one that's mostly built, but I'm going to start from scratch, and I'm going to show you just how relatively easy it is by building it all from scratch. All right, let's see if I can share properly here. I'm going to turn off the camera if that's okay. I'm kind of looking around. So hopefully am I still sharing? Should see a Copilot screen over here. I'm not super used to this. I might not be sharing. Okay, there we go. I think that's right. There we go. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the way I can get there, I mean, I might go to, let's say I have an Office subscription. I might go to office.com. I'm already logged in this browser. So when I click sign in, this should go right in. There we go. Yep, cool. and then I can get at all of my apps. I've already got them open in other browsers, but I can always get there from here. And maybe if maybe it's in the more apps, or I could go to, say, Power Automate, and I could get to Copilot easily enough from there too. If I just click on Power Platform, and there I see Copilot Studio. I've already got it open other tabs, but that's fine. Or if I know the URL is copilot.microsoft.com, I can go straight to there. The older one, web.powerva, actually still works as well. Okay, so just a little bit of a tour. So on the side here, there's a home button. Just kind of takes me to a higher level or like an introduction to it. And I could get started right here. I could start from a template. Here's like a travel zone, a store operations, a website Q&A, and there's others too. And we'll probably keep adding to this list. I could just start. I could jump right into one that I've been working on recently, or I could also drill into the learning content that's here. I'm going to go to my copilots, and you can see these are all the copilots I currently have in this environment. This is a trial environment, so you can always create a trial of Copilot to test it out if you do not have access to it yet. And then this libraries list here, this will be stuff that you build, such as plugins or connectors or prompts that then you could use in any of your copilots. So it's kind of a build once and keep it here, and you can see in your connectors and your prompts. And then you can also get to the other applications from here as well. I'm going to go to copilots, and you can see I've got a bunch there. Now my scenario is, and this is kind of a personal one for me. Every year for many, many years, including this coming weekend, I participate in a fundraiser for the multiple sclerosis. I'm from Minnesota. We call it the MS 150. And so over 2 days, we bike 150 miles and we fundraise. And I thought this might be a good example of showing how this might work. So what I could do is I could go to, I'm going to show this as an example of using a website. I'm going to go to the MS site, and I'm just going to grab the URL. Let's see if I can get it. There it is. And I'll paste it in here so you can see it. So here it is. Whoops, did I choose the wrong page? I didn't copy the link right. Okay, there we go. And this is higher level, but this should work. I'll be brave. I'll see if this is what normally I'd go right to my own site. I didn't grab the website right. Right home. Okay, let's try this. Yep. This might now, it might complain because it has, I think it might have a query in it, but we'll give it a try. So I'm going to do new Copilot. And so here I am starting out. I'm going to say, I'm just going to configure it. You can see I can edit the language. I'm going to stick to English here. I'll give it a name. I already had one called MS150, so I'll just call it MS150 demo. And I could give it a description, give it instructions. I'm going to start out giving it knowledge right away. And here you can see some of the things I could do. SharePoint and OneDrive files. I could pull from databases, other applications. If I had already created connectors to, say, Blackbaud, that would show up here as well. Although in this case, I'm going to use this website. And I'm going to put in the link. Yeah, it didn't like the query strings, so let me back this up. There, let's try that. Okay, I'll click add. And I'll go ahead and create. And so now the way we used to have to do it is we could point it at a website, and then we would say generate some topics, and so it would generate some topic suggestions, and then we would have to pick those and turn them on, make modifications. Now we don't actually have to we don't have to do that work. All we have to do is give it a URL, and my Copilot will be smart enough to look into that. Okay, so I'm going to test it. You can see over here on the right side. Let me, can I zoom this a little bit? Where's my, there. Hopefully that's not too big, but all right. So I'm going to type a question. I'll say, when is the MS-150 in Minnesota? And it will, now I haven't built a topic, and there it's provided information. It's even has references. So I could just go straight to that website right from here. But maybe I'm lazy. I just want to find out more information without having to drill in there. And so I might say, what are the details? And it will come back with something here. Yep, quite a bit. It goes from Proctor to Whitbread Lake, blah, blah, blah. And, it's a nice little description too. I might say, how much do I have to fundraise? And it should come back with something. So I could go on and get quite a bit of good information from this just by pointing it at that website. So there it is. The minimum is raising $300. All right, now let's say I want to do something like I'm maybe in this case I'm kind of cheating. I'm pointing out at a website, but let's say I am the MS Society and I want to have a Copilot that can allow someone to register for the event simply by going to my Copilot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to topics. You can see some of the ones that are here out of the box. Goodbye, greetings, start over. There's some lessons, some sample ones. We have these system ones. So like maybe if you used like single sign-on, you could use that to users could to authenticate, and it's already kind of pre-built for you. You just got to do a little bit of tweak to that. I'm going to go ahead and add a topic, and I'm going to say create from description with Copilot. So I'll click on that, and I'll name it register for MS-150. And I'm going to tell it now what I want it to do. So I might say ask for first name, last name. I don't know. You obviously lots of information you want to capture. I'll keep it simple. I'll just say city. I'm going to say ask for mobile number and email and preferred method of communication. And maybe I'll ask for food preferences and ask for hotel in Duluth, Minnesota. If yes, ask if, and I'll keep this super simple, Marriott, Hyatt, or Hilton. Okay, that's a pretty good start. I'll go ahead and hit create. This will take all of that. Now, I was pretty specific. Now, I've done this also. Oh, why not? I've also done this where I've not been very verbose. But the more you say, oh, come on, why is this not working? This just worked for me last night. I mean, I'll show you the one I just built. Shoot. Okay, this is the bravery of live demos. Well, son of a gun, why did that not work? All right. Okay, well, I'll show you my other one, and this is exactly what I did, and it did work yesterday. So I'm going to go over to this one. And so I can look at my topics and where'd it go? All right, where's my topic? Greeting. There, oh, it's right there. Okay, sorry, my vision apparently. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at this topic. So I created this exactly the way it had just I just showed you. So I'm not sure why it was failing on me there, but so what it did is it auto created these phrases, so I didn't have to sit and type those, and those are pretty good. Somebody says, I want to sign up for the MS-150, enroll in the MS-150, and then it's asked for things like, it did all these things that I asked for: the name, the email, the phone number, food preferences, do you need a hotel, and then it's offered. And then because I had conditions there, it's going with yes. If yes, then do this. If not, do this. You can see that the need hotel is equal to false. This side, it's need hotel is equal to true. Now, I might have a list already built of hotels, or a more a cool way of showing it, but it takes a bit more work, would be to actually have it look up based on geography. So the reason I said Duluth is because then I could use a plugin to look up hotels in the area and actually drill in, and you could have it go all the way to pretty much making the reservation for the person. And then I can also click on Copilot here, this little button up here, and I can keep going with what I had already started. So I could ask it to do more things. So like here's one: summarize the information gathered from the user adaptive card. Add a question to ask the user to choose their preferred contact method. Now, when I did this yesterday, I hadn't asked that, but you could see that as I was typing it, I told it to do that. But I could always add these in as well. I'm just going to jump in and test this out now. So I'm going to say register for MS-150. And so it's saying, absolutely, I just need to gather some information. So now that one I actually modified just a little bit after the fact. I went up here to that topic and I put in that text. Absolutely, I just need to gather some information. What is your name? Okay, so I'm going to say Ted Thompson, and then it's going to ask what's my email address and my mobile. Now this one I didn't tell it to include the preference for how to communicate. Do you have any food preferences? I'll just say no. But do you need a hotel in Duluth? I'll say yes. And then it's asking me, which hotel do you prefer? And I'll say Marriott. And then it's saying, thank you, we've completed the answers. We're sending you an email. And oh, I didn't complete that step. So I didn't finish out the process of sending the email, but that would be an action that we could do. So I'll scroll down and here we go. Thank you. So I didn't quite finish all of this, but basically I would just add a connector action, and I made the choice. Let me just start one. You can see, so I could call an action, and then I could go to connector and choose what I want to do. So this is where you would do something like, maybe I'm ready to now write this into my database. So I would get, say, my Blackbaud connector and write it into like ARCS and NXT if that's where I wanted to store it or wherever, or maybe I need an approval process. So that's where I can begin doing those other steps. Now I could describe it to Copilot and it could likely work, but you can see that you could also begin to do it. And there's lots and lots of connectors, and I had chosen Outlook, but you could send Gmail, you could do whatever your mail operating is. So that's all pretty cool. And then we might also create actions that we could use for more sophisticated stuff. So I might go here under actions, and I've already created this one for getting the MSN weather. So what I did, and I'll just kind of start it so you can see how I did it. Click add an action, and I just searched for get weather. I think that's how I could find it. And this is an out of the box one. There it is. Get current weather, get weather for today. You can see there's a couple there. And then I chose that, and that's basically a couple of clicks, and I've got it. And so now what I could do, and then then I have one more step. Now that's the action. Think of it as kind of like this step in between Copilot, using a connector, getting other data. But now I do have to incorporate it into a topic. So I created a topic before by describing it. I can do that again, but this time I'll just show it manually as well, because sometimes you'll create them that way. I think I have one. I do have one. That's okay. I'll just say from blank. I might change the name. I'll just say weather demo. And then I could add in some phrases here like what's the weather? What is the forecast for today? And I cannot spell. Although usually it still kind of manages it. So I might add a few. And then I would just add another step here where I call an action, and I'm choosing this plugin, and I choose the get forecast for today. And that's how I could create this. I've already done this, so I'm just gonna cancel out. And now I could say, clear this. I'll say, what is the weather? And this asks me what do I want, imperial or metric? I'll say metric for fun. It's also a shorter word to type. And doggone it, why is this not working? Oh my goodness, I'm failing here today on demo. This just worked like 20 minutes ago. Alas, maybe it's my Wi-Fi. I don't know. We'll see. Let me try one more time. Because then what it is supposed to ask is what location, and I could have it do my own or my local, or I could give it a specific city. There we go. Okay, that worked. And so then it gave me a bunch of information about, it's going to be 77, 64. So you might use that within the context of even this registration, because somebody might ask, what's the weather forecast for the ride if it's not too far out. So some pretty cool stuff. And I created this in front of you. Granted, I had an issue or two, but otherwise you could really get on your way to building a Copilot pretty quickly. Lots of other examples. You might use this for, say, supporting your constituents, your donors with other questions. And that's where you might point at other resources. You might leverage your existing knowledge base of information. You might use maybe public data. You might look into maybe other databases that you have, and so forth. All right, let me get back to, I've got just like 2 more slides. Let's see if I can do the share correctly. Start from here. All right. I think I'm still sharing. I'm looking for my meeting window. Oh my. Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm not sharing. 1 second. I think when I change out from doing one thing to the next is where it drops the share. Let me try this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so did the demo on that. I've got, and again, I'll be sharing this slide deck right away. And I've got a couple of pages of resources here. So this is things like how do you get it, as there is significant nonprofit pricing. So it can be, make sure you look into that for not only Power Automate, but also Copilot for Microsoft 365, any of those products. And so lots of links here, lots of information around privacy. Your IT department will very likely ask those questions. And then also some links for learning and just general documentation and how to begin to use it and take advantage of it. All right. Well, thank you all. I think we're about right on time here. I'm just going to check to see if I see any questions. Okay, I think maybe not. All right. Oh, just the comments earlier where I wasn't sharing things properly. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Hope to see you at other events, either this week or in the future. I will be in Seattle. And we also have a couple of regional events in September and November in a couple of cities. So watch out for that. And thank you all for joining. And thank you, Rose, for supporting us. All right. Take care, everybody.